Hey, everybody. Welcome to another Awaken Your Relationships. I am Julie Murphy and I'm the money chick. But guess what? We either work things out and we act it out and we do it through our money, through our health, and through our relationships. So, what I have learned as a certified financial planner and author of 2 books, guess what? We need to work on the relationship piece along with the health piece, along with the money piece, because otherwise, we just play ping pong and our emotions just like act out in those other areas. So Rita here has been a gift to our world in terms of helping us with the relationships. And today we are going to talk about 5 ways to stand up for yourself. And because we are finding that women don't necessarily know how to step into their power. And even if you're a heart-based male, I will also say that because I've met men who also cower down to women, like the women are the control freaks in their household. So I've kind of seen it both ways. To me, it's about who is the one who's been in the divine feminine energy, because we all have masculine and feminine, and where is that acting out in your world? So Rita, welcome. Thank you again.
You bet. I'm happy to be here this week. One of the reasons that I specifically work with women is just because their brains work differently.
That's
And
true.
so, I like to take out any sort of stigma between, we're only talking to men or we're only talking to women, because I mainly talk to women because I understand their brains. You
You
know,
have one of them.
Right. I'm one of them. I can see clearly how it's the difference in how we think that causes a lot of problems. And
Yeah.
so, in the world we live in, we have to stand up for ourselves as women because men's
Yeah.
brains get very focused, get very compartmentalized.
You
And
know,
they're
it's funny that you say that because I always say that about business. Like I've met financial planning offices or investment firms that are all men and there's major dysfunction there. And then I've also seen I've seen women who are 10, 20 years older than me that have literally become butch and male to do what they do in finance. And then they're like, but we're an all woman firm. And I'm like, that ain't good either because we both have the masculine and feminine energies. And I always say in running a company, you need a very good balance between both because men and women have different strengths. And you need the focus of the man, the male energy that's direct focused. Here's the goal, get it done. The problem is they might annihilate stuff along the way. Whereas the feminine is like, holding all these balls in one air, but they might be like, oh well, it's a nice thing to do business. That's why traditionally men's businesses are more profitable than women's businesses, right? Because women will give away the ranch and not have the self love and the self confidence and everything to hold the line from a profitability standpoint. So I see that all the time on the money side, exactly what you're saying in the relationship side. That's fascinating to me because we've actually never talked about that before.
right. And it's the same thing, whether you're in relationships, whether you're dealing with finance, whether you're dealing with your kids, whether it's social consciousness. I
So
mean,
true.
we've got these 2 different ways of thinking, and we expect the other person to think the way that we do. And so, in the world we're in, women really need to stand up for themselves, not because men are bad people, but because if we
Right.
don't, we're going to end up railroaded. We're going to end up sick with cancer. We're going to end up with chronic pain. We're going to end up with um, no close relationships and our kids hating us and dysfunction. And if
Right.
women don't stand up for themselves as they're meant to, then it'll just keep getting worse of abuse and
Well, and it's
collateral
funny. I'm
damage.
reading the book Boundary Boss right now because, I've always been the softer person in relationships, right? Meaning, in business, it's funny. I very much so turn on my masculine energy in business. I have 8 brothers. I'm in a masculine field. I can do that. But then in relationships, it's like I tend to be the softer one. And I've just really realized that I needed help setting healthy boundaries. And I've been it's interesting at how much that, especially you've taught me that, like when you deal with a narcissist and one that also has borderline personality disorder, that the best way you can love that person is by actually holding really strong, healthy boundaries.
Right. And
And
standing up
that
for
is
yourself.
what, all of these things that we're going to talk about today, the 5 ways to stand up for yourself, really is about boundary holding. And I would say that it's boundary holding from a place of true self-love and self-care, that you're not necessarily putting the other person's self-care ahead of your own. It's boundaries for you.
Yeah, and people confuse that a lot. I used to think of boundaries as in I had to try to make somebody else do something, and I just knew I couldn't, and I knew they'd dominate me anyways because they were bigger or meaner or stronger or, I wasn't willing to go there. I
Right.
wasn't willing to blow everything up,
Right.
know? And because of that, I knew I'd always lose, which is what happens to women. And so because we sit there thinking we have to set boundaries and make somebody else do something, and we know we can't do it, it's just easier to keep giving up and giving in.
Right.
Well,
Yeah, you know what? I know exactly what it is that you're talking about because that was a big part of my reality.
yeah.
Right. So what's the first one? The first one we wrote down here was the first way to stand up for yourself is to create space. Let's talk.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Every woman hits their limit where they can't take it anymore. And sometimes it'll take you 40 years, and other times, within a month of meeting somebody that you're not going to take it anymore.
Well, and I just want to recognize the fact that it takes you so long because you have that much capacity and that's how great you are.
Yeah.
But it's how do you then do that from a place of having it be something that works for you as opposed to something that works against you, right?
Right.
So just because you have the capacity to keep taking it on doesn't necessarily mean that you do, which is why creating the space is actually the most self-loving thing that you can do.
Oh, yeah, because if you can't think clearly, if you're being hijacked, Brene Brown would say that the most compassionate women she knew were the ones with the best boundaries. And it's
Mm,
because when you're constantly being beat up, when you're in the middle of drama, if somebody's always blowing your life up just because that's how they think, because there's
right.
no, one thought at the moment, and they're willing to blow everything up, how are you supposed to get anything done when you've got cancer? How are you
Right?
supposed to get anything done when your child is blowing up at home because they've got anxiety problems? How are you supposed to do anything when you don't know if you go to work, if you're going to be fired any day or not? You know,
Right?
how do you can't do that. And so the first step is to get some space. Get into a place where you aren't being triggered by someone all the time. And you can't do it if you don't protect yourself,
Right.
whatever
Right.
that looks like.
Right. And so places what have you seen women that are really challenged from the relationship standpoint? What are some of the best ways that they can create space? So like for me, like you and I have talked about this, when I have a huge capacity. And what I decide when it just got to this place where it was just not I had no more space, no more capacity, right? This is years ago. And I actually took my kids and I moved into a hotel room. And it had gotten to that place to where that created a safety place for me, right? And it may not be that extreme for people, right?
Right.
So
Well,
the
and if you
question
had
is,
caught it earlier, let's say you had recognized when you got married or before you got married that this wasn't a good fit
mm-hmm,
and that you wanted more for yourself
mm-hmm.
because you saw these red flags, then you would have avoided a lot of problems.
Yeah,
So,
I just always thought that it would work its way out and no one in my family ever got divorced
yeah,
and like,
everybody thinks that. Yeah,
yeah,
all sorts of women think that. I like to use the phrase "get mad before you're really, really mad." So create space before you need it.
well, I guess it showed up in ways where like I would take the kids on vacation by myself.
Hmm.
So that made more of the other stuff tolerable,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So I guess it's not like I didn't do some of those things.
Hmm. but you have to in order to get your head together. And maybe it's,
Or I stayed at work longer.
yeah.
I
And
hired nannies to do some of the stuff at home.
yeah,
Yeah.
and yours kind of ended up in an avoidance at times.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The My favorite way that I teach women to create space is to take time for themselves every day where they get reconnected to something bigger than themselves. You know, the old adage of stop and
Right.
smell the roses, and all women say, "Well, I don't have time, I don't have energy, I've," but it's more like we have the belief that we don't have the time or we don't have the energy.
Well, and that's kind of what leads us to number 2, right? Because number 2 is find your center.
Yes.
So once you create the space, then it's about finding your center because that's that tapping in piece that you're referring
Yeah.
to, right?
Yeah. Once you start going on a walk for 15 minutes every day
Mm,
and look at the birds and the trees, you start to hear, what's really going on. You get out of your own crazy. You get out of your own reaction. Boundaries are not for somebody else to control somebody else. Boundaries are to make sure you get your needs met. So boundaries,
that's beautiful.
like I'm only willing to tolerate feeling stressed out for 10 minutes before I start doing something that makes me feel better. That's creating space for yourself. And the
Yep.
faster you catch it, the easier the
Right.
problem is to resolve. If you can recognize that you are feeling stressed and do something about it at the very beginning, like go for your walk, then you'll
Hmm.
be able to tap into your heart,
Right.
hear what you really want. You won't be
Mm,
distracted by all the noise and the yelling and the drama and whatnot that's going on. So
right.
you create space, and then during that space, you don't just avoid, you actually connect. You reconnect with something bigger than yourself.
Right.
So,
And I watched one of my greatest teachers and that I love is Greg Braden.
oh,
Mm.
I love Greg Braden. I
Well,
totally went through his book, Wisdom Codes, and I went
yeah,
through and I used all of his
he
codes.
he totally because I'm a financial planner, so I'm left brain finance and he's left brain science, right? So as I merge in spirituality and finance, he merges spirituality and science. And
Yes.
one of the big pieces that he teaches from his 30 plus years of work is how we have to establish this state of what they call coherence. And that's based off of the research of heartmath.org, if anyone's interested in looking at that. And I've talked about HeartMath for years. And what this coherence is that the fact that you have to integrate your heart and your head. So many of us make these decisions from our headspace, and that's because we're not creating the space to then tap into you know finding your center, right? And which leads to our third way to stand up for yourself is then tapping into your heart. So it's like, find your center, which is just doing something to calm yourself down, like walking in nature or playing a game. It's really funny. I work with this young man who does all my online stuff. He's 20 years younger than me and he just knows technology way better. And it was hilarious. He came here this weekend to actually do all this taping for me. So that we had my courses and all that stuff. And he pulls out of his bag a Lego set. And I was like,
Oh, wonderful.
I go, you do Legos? And he goes, oh yeah, it puts me in my creative state. It helps me find my center. So I was like, so when we're talking about finding your center, like it's really about what brings you back to being a child.
Yes.
Because and this is how this is so connected to our number 3, which is why I bring up Greg Braden, is because of the fact that coherence is about the fact that you activate that heart space. And we've heard from years that Abraham Hicks talks about, in the law of attraction, tap into your, what you have to do is just feel the feelings, tap into the feelings. And there is a difference between your feelings and your emotions.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I think we don't differentiate between those two. So it's about, if you can sit there and even just put your hands on your heart and calm yourself down and breathe in to like a count to 5 and then out to the count of 8 and do this for a minute or two. and then feel the feelings that you want as an outcome of whatever the thing that you're talking about. This is how we tap into our heart, because then you're feeling those feelings. Like, one of the easiest ways for me to always get there is feeling the feelings of my children, or someone you love or something you love to do. So, and that's really tapping into that heart, because you're creating space, because you've likely, what I've learned, and this is true for myself as well, that you may have created walls around your heart, that your heart, it's one thing to say, yeah, tap into your heart. Well, if you got these freaking energetic, emotional walls, you're not going to be tapping into your heart, because it's going to be like, oh, I ain't going there, I'm going to my brain. Oh, I ain't going there, I'm going to my brain. So we really do have to create the space, then find your calm, find your center, and then tap in your heart. It's almost like you got to like go whoop, whoop, whoop.
Right.
And, right. and this coherence thing is about the fact that when you marry your heart and your head, that's when pure change and quantum change can actually occur.
Right. And I like to bring it back down to the physical self, because a lot of times it's our bodies that take us off track. Our bodies.
That's true, because of the muscle memory of other stuff.
And so I have to use a lot of hacks. It's easy.
Tell me more.
It's easy enough for people to say, well, just do this 5-minute meditation, you'll feel better. And I would.
What the hell does that mean?
Right. And I would do this 5-minute meditation, and I'd still be angry, and I'd still be scared or frustrated or irritated or whatever. But I found when I did the meditation and I added the smell of coffee or chocolate, and I ate a couple blueberries, and I went and looked at some butterflies and flowers in a garden, and I listened to music which sounded like angels, and I wore something soft and a good color that I love to wear.
Beautiful.
And I talked to a friend that I like, who likes me. I need all those things in order to get myself out of the place of fight or flight, because the body has a strong attachment,
right,
to feeling the way we've always felt, which could be
that's so true.
We need every hack you can find to make yourself happy. It's not enough to just do this thing. You have to do like 8 things.
And it's funny because, I have been on this journey for years, right? A couple years. And you're right. The physical body is the one that's like my Achilles heel, right? So, and it's so interesting to me that we get challenged, right? So it is an example. As I'm learning this whole process too, and standing up for myself at a deeper level and holding these healthy boundaries, I am really, my physical body is really moving this stuff out. And I've gotten this Peloton treadmill that I love, and it's gotten right. And once you know what happens this morning? This morning, my son's playing basketball and he loses the basketball, and I'm in the middle of a run and it winds up underneath the Peloton and breaks my Peloton. So like these things, what I want people to realize is that then we can choose for these things to derail us, because you're being challenged to go back to your old patterning. So are you? Or are you going to go, oh yeah, this is how I would have done this before, or let's do this over here, and we're going to go this route, because to your point, it takes more than just that. It takes more than just, I'm like laughing at myself because I've known for months I'm supposed to get an elliptical machine. I'm going, well, if I had the elliptical machine in my house, then it wouldn't be a big deal that the Peloton just got broke, right? Like little things like that to create, it's almost like when I talk to people about creating like their financial foundation, it's like you want your savings accounts and then your short-term bond accounts, and then you can do some stocks and things but it's about creating a solid foundation, like whether even in your exercise regime to get your body to this next place, position yourself to be lucky and have a solid foundation so that you're not, sitting there going, ugh, so that when things try to interrupt you actually going to this healthier place that you desire to be and standing up for yourself, you're not then falling, off the edge.
Because you're going to get derailed. Life continues on. People have opinions and their own journey that they're on. And we like to think to ourselves, well, I'm going to do this. I'm going to feel good when everything gets aligned.
Right.
Nothing is ever going to be aligned. You have to align with it,
Right.
which means that you
So
have to
true.
calm yourself down. You have to put yourself in a good state of mind, irregardless of what anybody else is doing. In fact,
Right.
one of the most healing things you can do is be in a relationship with a really toxic person.
Tell us more about that.
Because a
That
toxic
seems like
person,
an oxymoron. Like,
I
what? What did
know,
you
I
just
know.
say?
A toxic person will push you and push you
Mm,
and push you until you finally have no more capacity and you
mm,
feel like you are finally ready to do something that's good for yourself. You're finally
right.
ready to put yourself first, no matter what's going on, no matter who's going to be mad about it, no matter
Right.
whether you're going to lose your job. No matter what, you're going to put yourself first. And when you reach that point, and a narcissist will speed up the process, a toxic person, you could have been, if you hadn't gotten married to the person you did, you could still be suffering, just no matter who you were with.
Right.
But they
Right.
force you because of their own challenges and their own way of doing things. They force you to finally put yourself first. I told you before we got on, I read this article in the New York Times about a 100-year-old Black woman who was a park ranger, the oldest park ranger. And she's active. She's got a great life. She's lived an interesting life, but she didn't realize until she was in her 40s when her father in law and her ex husband died that she had been defined by men her entire life. Only when everything came crashing down did she finally make the change inside of
Mm,
herself to put herself first.
yeah.
So narcissists and drama and problems will force you to make the change you need to grow into the person you're supposed to be and be happy. So,
Yeah. And I actually just said that I had a friend that actually recently is experiencing almost exactly what I've experienced in the last year and a half, where they're like in the courts with their ex, and it's like the courts can't see, like the court system manages to the least common denominator. I'm super clear about that. And so people who feel like they're going to get what they need from the courts, you're not. Like so this is not about, so if you feel like the court system is going to actually hold those boundaries for you, or any lawyer for that matter, that is absolutely not going to happen.
and how many of us had fully functioning parents that held the boundaries for us? How many of
Right.
us had parents that didn't have their own issues or didn't have their own struggles or weren't selfish at times or weren't,
Right.
toxic themselves at times? Almost all of us did. There is no
Right.
perfect world. You have to
Right.
learn how to live within the world that exists,
Right. Right.
and which includes your own human frailty.
Right. Which actually then kind of puts us to number 4, right? So number 4 is create a loose game plan to align more with your heart and
Right.
start to live from that place, because we've learned to live from the place of trying to make other people happy, trying to show up the way that other people want us to show up in the world and not necessarily how I want to show up in the world. That's probably one of the biggest eye openers for me in this whole process was my entire life I thought I was doing exactly what my heart desired. And I didn't realize until I really uncovered what my trauma was from my childhood, that I didn't realize that it was all about me trying to, everything I had done up to that point was about trying to prove that I was enough and that I was worthy. And I was trying to gain people's acceptance. And I always just thought that I kicked ass and took names and I was super successful at it. But the fuel behind that success was not authentic.
Right. It
It
was
was built
pain
on
and
stilts.
rage. Yeah, it was pain and rage and conflict and
Right.
drama.
Just
And
trying to prove that, hey, just because I had a vagina, I could be good at things. Right.
right, right.
Because, and again, I love my dad to death. My dad and I are very close, but he is super confused why I was a girl and not a boy and successful. Like he can't reconcile that in his own head. And so to a young woman, like that's like, I just try to prove myself, right? And you know what? You can't do it any other way, right? Because you are who you are, and that's your soul's journey. And I'm grateful for all the lessons that I got along the way. But when you're trying to now tap into your heart, I remember the first time I had this coach, and it was a business coach, and I had no idea really what I was about to embark into. But she had said, "Okay, we're going to do vision boards," and vision boards have been around for a long time. And this is before my oldest was born, so he's almost 13. And she said, "Here's some magazines. Just pull out what resonates with you." And I was like, I literally sat there just kind of thumbing through, going,
Oh yeah, like I don't
I
know
don't even
what
know what she's talking about.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
what?
I hated
I
this
was
before.
so disconnected from my heart that because I was trying to solve it from my brain and not from my heart. And I'm highly educated. I have lots of degrees. I could figure anything out from that perspective. But the heart intelligence, no idea.
So
No
we
idea.
have to have a game plan as to how we want to stand up for ourselves. Now, one of my favorite stories is when I was watching The Dream or The Last Dance or whatever it was with Michael Jordan and the whole Bulls team.
Yeah.
That came out. That was really interesting. And one of the stories was about Steve Kerr. Now, Steve Kerr, there's no reason he should have been on the championship winning Bulls team like he was. He wasn't black. He wasn't, 6'8". He wasn't known for, being a stellar basketball player. But he knew that if he kept focused on what he wanted and he kept, working it, kept working the system, that when the opportunity showed up, he'd be ready to jump.
Right.
On.
Totally.
And that's what we're doing here. When you want to stand up for yourself, first of all, you have to get a little bit of space. Then you have to calm yourself down. Then you have to listen to what would make you happy.
I always tell people it's about, if it makes you giggle, that's your heart.
Mm-hmm.
Or, men get this smirk on their face.
Yeah.
Right. So if it makes you giggle, you just know that just woke up the childlike part of you, which is your heart.
Mm-hmm.
And because people can recognize the giggle. Are you giggling or are you not giggling? And my clients look at me like, huh? I go, does it make you giggle? And then I'll see some behavior, like one of the spouses will have like this, they'll just be like they'll just smirk a little. And I'll be like, see, in your in your heart space, if you found the giggle,
Yes.
So follow that. That's really,
Yes.
really important.
Yes. And that will tell you what you really want your life to look like.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start reflecting and praying or asking or pulling tarot cards or whatever, getting your analytical mind out of the way, because that's the one that'll screw things up.
Right.
And come up with a game plan.
Yep.
One of the things that we do is we ignore something until we're forced to react to it.
Right.
And then we react to it from, the last time we were thinking about it, which was when we were angry or pissed off, and the whole situation's changed by then.
Mm-hmm.
If you can look at it and say, I want to be clean. I want to be fair to myself. I want to be fair to the other person. I want to be able to look at myself in the mirror tomorrow morning and not feel like I lost control.
Right.
That I treated somebody in a way that I'm not okay with, or that I treated myself in a way that I'm not okay with.
Right.
That's why you need a little bit of time, because you have to look at how you want to stand up for yourself and why and what's behind it. And you'll get practice.
Well, it's like building a muscle, right?
Yeah, exactly. And people will keep they'll keep taking you to court. They'll keep, they'll keep upsetting your kids. They'll keep pushing back because that's their nature. That's the nature of many people in the world.
So what's the solution to that, Rita, right? So you have these narcissists that just keep doing all those things. Because, you told me early on, you could choose to just ignore it. You could just push back. You can, what I've learned in my own experience, none of those work.
None of those work.
None of them, because you can choose any of those responses. And if you're trying to play the other person's game, none of it works.
None of it works.
You literally just have to go live your own life.
Yeah,
Literally. That's
literally.
the only solution.
Yeah. And then if you want to change the relationship with your spouse, with your ex, with your mother, with your mother-in-law, with your kids, you
Right.
you now have your game plan. And when the door opens, it's like your subconscious jumps
Just
on
walks
it.
right through.
Yeah.
Well, and that's number 5, right?
Exactly.
Number 5, which seems a little esoteric. So hear Rita say this. Ready? Go.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you're hanging around, you have this game plan, you're like, you know what, the next time that they say this to me, then I'm going to say blah, blah, blah. And then you're kind of like the predator. You're kind of like the Black Panther in the tree saying, I know this animal is going to come this way. I know this is going to happen. And when they do, I'm going to be ready because I know what I want to say. I know I'm going to be clean. I know it's going to be fair and direct. I know I've drinking enough chamomile tea today and taken my Xanax. So I know I'm not going to, flip my lid. I'm going to be very strategic.
Yep.
And when you go from being the victim to being the one who's in control of the situation, it all changes.
Totally.
Because your energy changes. And so now here this person walks in having a bad day, doing what they've always done. Like when you would come home, you said you'd come home and you never knew whether somebody was going to be in a good mood or a bad mood.
Oh yeah, whether I was going to be pounced on or it was going to be like the happiest evening in the world.
If they're in a great mood, great, don't need to do anything. But as soon as they open that door, you can be the one who pounces because you're not waiting until you're so depleted that you're helpless and sick and old and dying that they can rip you apart. Now you're in your strength.
Right.
Guess who's got the power now? Because a narcissist comes from their insecurities.
That's good.
They come from their places of woundedness. And when you're not wounded anymore, you're the one in the position of power. And you're able to say things in a way that people can hear you. And you're able to back it up. And this is boundary setting.
Right.
When you communicate and back it up and protect yourself first, and they've got no choice. If you lock the door, their option is to kick down the door or try to get through the door, but most of them will go away. A lot of thieves, if they see the door locked, it's not worth it. And a lot of narcissists are cowards. And so if the doors, if there's too much in the way, like if you've got friends on the phone, while you're talking to them, if you've got the cops on the way, if you've got, 4 locks on your door, they literally can't get through it. You've decided to protect yourself.
Right. But I also want to say, so our number 5 is wait for the doors to open.
Yes.
So meaning that if you keep trying to manage your way all through what the narcissist is going to do, that's a losing game. So it's really about, you just have to focus on you and wait for the doors to open. Like my boyfriend would say this to me all the time. Joel, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to respond to the lawyers. You don't have to respond to him. You don't have to respond to your kids. And I have had a really challenging time doing that because to me, I have been wired to fix, to people please, to do all that stuff. And this last round of lawyers has just really actually just put me in a place of, they tell you have to respond by this day. I'm just not, because I'm not, because all I want to spend my time on is creating the life that I truly want to live, not being whiplashed by what's going on in other people's lives.
Yes.
And so this is where if you don't respond to what's coming at you and you just wait for those doors to open, as you're building that muscle of your heart and really doing what's in your heart and what matters to you, then you can just walk right through the door.
Yes, exactly. Because the door's open. You're not the one trying to force your way through a door.
Right. Yeah, don't push.
Cops are called.
It's the divine feminine. Allow, accept, hold the space, be. The masculine is the do, the push, and don't.
And the universe will support you because the universe
so we have to trust that.
Benevolent. Right. Yeah. So if you can take care of yourself, then the situation will change. When I was in high school, I remember I was like a sophomore. And I said to myself, I just need to wait until I graduate because then I'll be able to go to college and things will change. Many times, if you take care of yourself first, things will change around you
Yeah.
and they'll get into alignment and you'll be able to make progress. When you can't make
Yep.
progress, work on yourself. When you
Right.
can make progress, that's when you take the step forward.
Absolutely. So, Rita, how do people get a hold of you? Thanks. This is amazing.
Good. I'm glad you like it. RitaHickmanCoaching.com, or they can find me on YouTube, or they can find me on Facebook. Rita Hickman, if you just do a little, search for me. I've been around for a long time. And so on YouTube, I've got tons of videos on narcissism, on healing yourself, on the body mind connection. On Facebook, I post like every 2 days, stuff, meditations and stuff that keeps
Totally.
women moving forward. Or they can contact me and do a free one-on-one, because I'll spend, an hour with them or so and talk to women and be like, hey, where are you at? What do you need to do next? How can I support you? So they can just contact me directly at RitaHickmanCoaching.com.
Beautiful. Well, thanks so much. And we'll see everybody next week.
Yep, you're brilliant. I'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye, Julie. Great. You